The September ban list has officially arrived, and despite multiple disappointments, it did bring back one of my favorite monsters. After serving time for Hulk's crimes, Red Rose is finally back at 3, meaning it's time to start theorizing. For those of you that skip pile format, Red Rose is a card that rewards you for synchro summoning. After being used as material, it brings out Roxrose Dragon, who then fetches you a Basil Rose Shoot from the deck, which then allows you to special summon a Rose Dragon from your grave, including the Rox Rose or Red Dragon that you've already used. Previously used in the Adventure Engine, Red Rose was used to turbo into Baron, and then Roxrose would go into something like Shooting Riser, or you'd use the Basil to revive Red Rose and then link into Verite to cheat out DP or Dragoon. However, as you may have noticed, Baron, Verite, and Hulk are all banned, so who and what does Red Rose play with now? While you could technically still play it alongside the Adventure Engine, the level 10 synchro pool leaves a lot to be desired, with some of our best options being locked away due to Griffin Rider not meeting a necessary requirement. We do technically have access to Gen X Arms Return 0, which normally would be great as we'd have an immediate Dark in the Grave. However, unless you go into Riser and dump something like Jet Synchron, we don't have a way to check Snake Eyes. You could always ride the Red Rose and then go into Closed Moon and do some Fiendsmith plays, but the level 9 synchro lineup isn't as great, and I don't want to spend $300 on engravers. However, there is a cheap and affordable archetype that shits out bodies at multiple levels, which we can then abuse with Red Rose and the tuners it produces. We're talking about Runick. Runick currently gives us access to the levels 2, 3, 4, 5, and 9. So let's take a look at each Runick and what synchros it gives us access to. With the level 2 Hugin, we gain access to the level 5 lineup, most notably Hyper Librarian, Axel Synchron, Ib, and Garden Rose Maiden. While I'm sure Ib, Maiden, and Axel could set up some fun lines, we're going to focus on Hyper Librarian because between the draw power of Librarian and the Runicks, you should always have what you need in hand. The level 3 Munin gives us access to the 6-star synchros, Roselia, and Mud Dragon. At level 4, Gary gives us access to monsters like Shooting Riser, Ancient Fairy, and Black Rose, but for this build, I'm not really feeling any of those. Gary does have a use of synchro material, but we'll come back to that later, and by later, I mean post Rage at the Abyss. Next, we have the level 5 Freaky, which gives us access to the level 8 synchro Diabelle, and in the near future, Primera Primus. Our last Runick is level 9 Sleipnir, and with Sleipnir we have access to our level 12 lineup of Sigma, Legacia, Auxila, and most importantly, Crimson Dragon, who in turn gives us access to Supernova and Blizzard. With that being said, let's go ahead and explore some combos here. Our simplest play is just a single Red Rose and a single Runick Quick Play. Starting off, we activate our Runick Quick Play, go into Munin, summon Red Rose, and sink 6, go into Mud, effect of Red Rose activates Engrave, Roxrose comes out, Roxrose effect gives us a Basil, Mud Dragon effect, enter Dragoon, with at the bare minimum, 1 card in hand to discard. Next we'll look at Red Rose with 2 Runick cards in hand. Our first Runick Quick Play is going to go ahead and summon Hugin to the field. Hugin effect will discard a generic card in our hand, and then add Fountain to hand. Next we'll activate our Fountain, summon our Red Rose, and then sink 5. This will go into Hyper Librarian. The effect of Red Rose activates, we'll get our Rox Rose and add Basil to hand. Next we'll activate our second Runick Quick Play, go into Munin, effect of Runick Fountain, place our 2 Runicks back on the bottom, and draw 2, and then we'll just go ahead and sink 6, go into Mud Dragon, effect of Librarian gives us a draw, activate our Basil, bring back our Rox Rose or our Rose Dragon, Mud Dragon effect, Dragoon. So off this we refill our hand and have Dragoon and Librarian on the field for follow-up plays. The alternative route for this play goes back to this part of the field right here once we've activated our second Runick card and drawn 2 off of Fountain. We'll sink 6 again, however this time we'll go into Arcelia. Chainlink 1 will be Librarian, Chainlink 2 Arcelia. On the chance that you didn't open any of the spells or traps like we did with the Imperm here, we have Runick Fountain and Basil that we can send as cost for Arcelia's effect. Arcelia effect will activate as Chainlink 2, giving us LZ, and then Librarian will let us draw. LZ effect will send our Basil, summon LZ, and then grab Rukia to hand. Rukia can special summon itself, we'll sink 6 once again, go into Mud, draw a card, Mud Dragon effect will go into Albion, Albion effect will banish Mud Dragon and itself. Once again we go into Dragoon. So over the course of the turn we've drawn 4 extra cards, summon Dragoon, then we have Arcelia and Rukia in the Grave follow-up, which will allow us to also bring out Elzet on our opponent's turn. If the Librarian route feels too risky, we activate our Runick, summon Munin, Red, sink 6, and go into Mud, bring out our Rox, grab our Basil, Fusion, bring out Dragoon, activate our Runick card, go into our Munin, activate Basil, revive Rox, sink 6, go into Arcelia, and then proceed with cards in hand. If the Librarian route feels a little too risky, we can always proceed as follows. Activate our Runick card, bring out Munin, Red Rose, sink 6, go into Mud, Red Rose effect, bring out Rocks, grab Basil, Fusion, Dragoon for protection, activate our second Runick quick play, bring out Munin, Basil, revive our Rocks, sink 6, Arcelia effect, grab Woes, set Woes, and pass. So we end on Dragoon. On our opponent's turn, we have our Woes, which can then grab LZ, who in turn sinks 8, brings us Diabell, who grabs one of our spells or traps in grave. So we have our Dragoon negate, we have our Diabell effect, which can then either go into Silvera to Book of Eclipse our opponent's field, or we go into Zapper, pop a back row, and then sink into Chaos Angel. Another possible route we have available to us is to go a Runick quick play, but this time we're going to summon Sleipnir, summon our Red Rose, and then sink 12, summon Legacia. So Chain Link 1 will be our Red Rose, Chain Link 2 Legacia. We'll draw a card off Legacia, and then Red Rose will summon our Rocks Rose to the field. Activate our second Runick card, and summon another Sleipnir. Sink 12 into Crimson Dragon effect, into Blizzard. You can do the same play but swap Legacia for Auxilla, and in turn start going for a Centurion combo. The reason I'm not really using that one is because it goes a long way to end up on the same board. Once the new Primera card comes out, we can use Freaky to go into level 8, and then grab our Oath and proceed our Centurion plays from there. Alright, starting things off, we have our primary tuners, 3 copies of Red Rose, 1 copy of Rocks, and of course the Basil shoot to go alongside them. Red Rose has synergy with all of the Runick cards, and because it's a dragon, it allows us to go into Dragoon as well. Up next we have our White Forest package, 3 copies of LZ, 1 Sylvie, and 1 Rukia. Joining them are the one-ofs in Woes and Tails. LZ allows us to make use of all the spells in our deck, Rukia the extender, and Sylvie as follow-up. The reason I'm only running 1 Sylvie over running 3 is that with the Red Rose and the Rocks Rose already in the deck, I want to cut down the normal summons because those take priority, and opening multiple Sylvies and 1 Rocks Rose just feels bad. In order to give us some good old Runick control, we have 3 copies of Fenrir. This card gives us a way to deal with problematic monsters and doesn't eat up our normal summon. Onto our Runick lineup, 2 copies of Fountain, 3 copies of Tip, 3 copies of Freezing Curses, 3 copies of Flashing Fire, 3 copies of Destruction, 3 copies of Slumber, and then 1 of Smiting Storm and 1 of Dispeller. Onto our hand traps, we have 3 copies of Ash Blossom, 3 copies of Imperm, and then our primary form of Fiendsmith Hate, 1 copy of Magnamut, 2 Druid's Worm, and 1 Baldrake. Onto the extra deck, starting off we have 2 copies of Hugin and 2 copies of Munin. In this particular build, I'm prioritizing Dragoon and the White Forest plays, meaning that I have to have 2 Munins, both as follow-up, and just ways to guarantee that we have access to both lines. We're not running Gary because we don't have any level 7 synchros to go into, and we're not running Freaky because we don't have any level 8s at the moment that are worth running outside of Diabella. However, post-ROTA, that'll change because we do have access to Primera Primus, which allows us to set up our Centurion plays more reliably. While I did showcase the Blizzard play earlier, however, I find that the Synchro package for Blizzard takes up a lot of space, and that unless we're running the Centurions, it's not really worth dedicating so much extra deck space to. Next, we have our Dragoon package, 1 copy of Mud Dragon, 1 Albion, and 1 Dragoon. You could cut the Albion and just focus on the Red Rose play for Dragoon, but Albion helps bridge the White Forest play into Dragoon as well. Onto our Synchro lineup. Starting things off, we have Hyper Librarian. Hyper Librarian gives us a level 5 option to take Hugin off the field, and also helps us draw through our deck with the rest of our Synchro plays. In addition, as a spellcaster, it sets up our Tales of White Forest. Up next, we have our 2 White Forest 6s, Silvera and Reselia. Reselia being our play starter on our turn, and Silvera being one of our stronger interruptions. Up next, Diabell and her tuner of choice, Zapper Shrimp. This allows us to go into our final Synchro monster, Chaos Angel. And our last 2 monsters in our extra deck, SP Little Knight and Typhoon, to make use of our negated monsters. We're still in the early format, so things could change, but it also feels like we've been here forever. There's plenty of ways for this deck to go. If you have any ideas, put them in the comments below, and I'd love to see them and build from there. Till next time, peace.